Welcome to the ACC Panic Room alongside Lauren Brownlow. I'm Joe Ovies. I am not at ACC Tip-Off. I'm actually outside PNC Arena where NC State plays basketball, but that's not why we're here today. We're here for the start of the Cane season. Brownlow, you're back at the Brownlow bunker, not in Charlotte for ACC Tip-Off. Although I feel like maybe this is just me being old and crusty over time, but I feel like after last year and the Coach K farewell send-off and things like that, this ACC tip-off, which is going to be a little bit more subdued, a lot more of the unknown, a lot more chill, I think I'm fine.
I'm not fine, but, to be fair, there's a lot of reasons for that. This was definitely a day where it was hitting me, especially when I start getting the Josh Pastner immediately at the same time. Our friends Caroline Darney and Nada Edwards both text me about the Josh Pastner epic press conference I'm missing that includes him saying they found water on Mars from Georgia Tech. I'm sad.
When you put it like that, that's a very valid point.
We apparently also missed Jim Boeheim going up. He's past Jim Boeheim, and he's like, 47 years? Is that how long? And Jim Boeheim's like, yeah. And he's like, that's crazy. And he's like, you won't make it that long.
A lot of us won't. That's the thing when it comes to Jim Boeheim. A lot of us just won't. I'm being somewhat facetious about the subdued nature of what this ACC tip-off is about, but I do think there's something to it when it comes to how we expect basketball to play out. We got John Shire, but there's nothing about John Shire that gets you all worked up, right? In the same way with Hubert Davis last year, it's Hubert Davis really likable, and the only thing you have to kind of keep an eye on is how is that navigating that first season where you're truly the guy. We saw how it played out with Hubert Davis, shaky at the front. They settled in. Obviously there was one departure that led to Brady Manick being forced into a role. He thrived in it, and the rest is history. What I'm curious about with John Shire and this team, it's a whole new group. There's no Coach K kind of farewell stuff. Just how comfortable are they going to be this upcoming season in his first year?
I mean, it's interesting. I think that he's been waiting for this a while. He kind of knows what he's getting into. He's a smart guy, John, and I think he's capable for sure. The players obviously like him a lot. I think that helped Hubert as well, right? We saw that throughout his season, that this was a guy a lot of them had worked with for a long time. It was a guy that recruited some of them. They felt close to him. And I think John will have that same kind of benefit as well with some of these guys. Obviously, plenty of these guys are just coming in, but he still recruited a lot of them. And so I think that will help him some. Is it going to be easy? Obviously, it's not going to be easy, but certainly getting the talent that they're going to have in will help at least a little bit. And it's interesting how many this is the part that's interesting to me, is of all the people that like to root against Duke for Coach K, what happens to them, right? Because I will not name these people, but I've gotten texts from some of my friends who did not like Coach K, who have said, I really like John. And I was like, you should. John's a good dude. John's great.
No, I think you're right. I think that's that's been part of the sizzle with Duke and Carolina. And what we know about college basketball in general, it's this cult of the coach. It's a cult of personality. People loved Roy Williams because of his folksy nature. Some people rolled their eyes and they didn't like Roy because of it, but there was just as many people who liked it. And then to your point about Coach K, the reason why there was some heat in the Smith Center, it was because they knew it was Coach K's last season and they wanted to send him off. This, to me, when John Shire comes to the Smith Center for the first time as the head coach, I'm not sure if it's going to have the same kind of thing. What are they going to do? They're going to hold up some signs of his face that he used to make when he was a player? I don't know. Maybe that's the case. So, and I don't even know if Duke players are not likable anymore, right? Try to think about the last unlikable Duke player that was the focal point of college basketball is Grayson Allen. But from that point on, you haven't really seen Duke. These Duke teams have been kind of likable Duke teams in the grand scheme of things. So it's going to be a whole new different dynamic. Maybe we'll just focus on handshakes, who shook hands, who didn't dap you up, like we saw twice last season.
Yeah, there was. That's the thing. That was between Shire and Hubert, and so maybe so. Who knows? But I think that they're both guys that their players like a lot. They both, by everything we can tell, seem like good guys that are worth rooting for, cheering for, whatever you want to call it. And I think that they'll probably bury some of that. But they'll want to hold up the rivalry too. I think it's important to both of them.
No, I'm with you on that, and I'm sure.
Maybe
And
they can manufacture some beef. I don't know.
Let's hope so. For our sake, for Panic Room purposes, for clicks and all that stuff. People like to obsess. Like, you're just doing this for the clicks. In some cases, yes, we do want a little bit of sizzle, so we can get the
we did literally make a Panic Room that was click on this, it's about Zion or something like that, and y'all did. So
and you did. It was an experiment, so we appreciate that. Meanwhile, again, outside here, PNC Arena for the start of the Cane season, where we're doing the broadcast from today. But I'll tell you this about Kevin Keats and the Wolfpack. I don't know squat about him. Like, honestly, I don't know squat because it's a whole new group. It's obviously you got Turquavion, but it's like you got a whole new group, and it's just brought here to kind of make or break Keats's year. And I do think that fans are going to be more likely to come to Canes games this year than they are to Pack games this year until they get shown something, some reason to buy in for the Wolfpack. And that's the nature of college basketball now. You can get one new player, one key guy to transfer in. I mean, that's the kind of the hope with Pete Nance at North Carolina. One new guy to come in and kind of change the trajectory of things. We'll see if that happens with the Wolfpack.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of an across college basketball thing for sure too. Across sports, maybe even is like you can be bad for a year or two, and then people, as long as you give them hope, right? You have to give them hope that something is changing or is going to change or that it can get better. If they're able to get some positive momentum early, I think people will come back. But I think that there's just a lot of state fans out there that feel like the last couple of years haven't gone very well. And maybe there are reasons for that. And maybe there aren't, but they have lost some of their momentum that they had before. And, he's going to work his hardest to get it back, but it's going to be tough, I think.
A couple things to discuss from Jim Phillips's press conference today. The ACC commissioner talked about.
Did he do an opening statement? I didn't even see that.
I just read the transcript, and the most interesting aspect to me is the continued discussion about the expansion of the NCAA tournament. This is something that Matt Norlander had reported on last week or the week before. It's preliminary discussions. It's just kind of thinking, outside the framework of what you're used to. And the idea is across the NCAA, they want to get up to 25% of colleges that play a particular sport into a postseason, in their bracketed postseasons. So if you did the math, out of 363 college basketball, Division I college basketball teams, 25% of that is a considerable amount of teams. Okay. So
except for who are those teams going to be?
Well, right. Is this just a way to get more Power 5 teams in?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And that's that's where you lose me.
And that's the thing where this would be my question. And this is something that would be addressed, I guess, if this is something that's going to be taken seriously. Let's say you get to 96 teams. Let's say you get to 128 teams in the NCAA tournament. I mean, at this point, you got to put it on the table. What are you ultimately doing? Are you cashing in on the CBS Turner deal for March Madness? And that essentially is what your entire season is about. Is that worth it to undercut the things that have helped build your league? Because if you go to 128 teams or even 96 teams and more ACC teams get in the NCAA tournament, then what is the point of an ACC tournament? At this point, it's just a jamboree. There are no stakes in the ACC tournament. It's an exhibition fan festival. I know Giulio, who's sitting across from me here, would point out, well, maybe this is when you do the ACC tournament to start the season, as just one big fun way to do it. I mean, there used to be the Dixie Classic. The Big Four tournament used to be a thing in the Greensboro Coliseum. So why wouldn't you bring some level like that back to get people invested in the regular season? Because at that point, by the time we get to the ACC tournament, we already know what the deal is. There's nothing to play for.
That's the thing. Yeah. Like, can you play your way in or out in those tournaments? I guess. But then it always feels so arbitrary too, because it's like, oh, if you lose that first game and you're a bubble team, you're out. And it's like, there's always these rules thrown on it that just seem silly. And to me too, like, I know that every year we're having a conversation about Team X and Team Y that are left out. But we're also having conversations about how did Team X or Team Y get in? Right. And, to me, it almost seems a little on the unfair side that a Power 5 team that suddenly gets super hot, even though they had like a terrible year, that suddenly wins a few games in the conference tournament and gets to, makes a run and gets to sneak in as an at-large. Like, I don't like seeing those teams usually. I mean, it can be fun. It can be a little fun, but it's like, there's no magic to that. Like, I know that this is like the college football playoff in that the athletic directors, especially the Power 5 schools, want to get more of their own into the tournament. And that's what this is going to be about. I'm sure of it. And to me, it's unfair. You already see teams like in conferences that aren't the major five, like the Big Five, winning their league's regular season and getting left out because some other team got hot and went on some season.
Right.
You see below 500 teams making the tournament. If you're going to expand, maybe start expanding to some of those. You know what I mean? Like, I could see that. You want to add more Cinderellas in the mix, I'm here for it. But, like, I don't know. This just feels silly.
Well, I agree. I wouldn't like to see it, but I know money is, it's like Wu-Tang, the famous philosophers, Wu-Tang, cash rules everything around me. And if that's going to be your motivator, well, then you're going to bump out to 96 teams. You're going to bump out to 128 teams. And I guess the ACC will find a way. I don't know. Maybe there was something more to, I think it was John Wildhack, who's now at Syracuse, former ESPN guy, talking about, why is it that Duke and Carolina only play twice a year? Maybe they should play 3 times a year. Maybe they should play 4 times a year.
They have played 4, but it was a while ago.
Right. So that's but they want to do it in the regular season all the time. I mean, at this point, all you're really doing is furthering the idea that the only thing that matters in regular season is the Duke Carolina game, and everything else suffers from it. And at that point, you might as well just have them play an invitational. Just like, all right, Carolina's going to host a bunch of ACC teams that come through. I mean, at this point, that's all you're really going to do.
Look, all we've gotten over the past couple years especially is more and more evidence that the TV people, and the conference leaders who do whatever they say do not care how watchable their product is.
Yeah.
Just look at the Big Ten getting $1 billion in spite of their weekly punt-offs from everyone that's not Ohio State. I'm sorry. Yeah. That is unwatchable football. And yet they don't care. Do you know what I mean? Like, they don't care what you like to watch. They don't care how good the product is anymore. They just know that you're gonna. And eventually, I mean, who knows? Maybe that catches up with them. Maybe it doesn't. You could argue it already has a little bit in college basketball, considering it with viewership numbers being down. But, whatever.
All right, well, let's go wrap it up for this edition of the ACC Panic Room. We will see you this weekend for, speaking of Duke and Carolina, a very intriguing matchup between the Blue Devils and the Tar Heels at Wallace Wade Stadium. We will see you then.